Let's do it. So welcome everyone to our three wonderful guests here. Welcome to our workshop for creating community on campus, how admission officers build diverse classes. We really appreciate you taking the time, to come and learn more about what we have to say about the topic and, dive deeper into this topic of diversity. We're going to first start off with introductions. So if we're just going to go down the line, and we're going to say a little about ourselves as well as the institution that we're representing. Armin, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Good morning. My name is Armin. I am the director of first year admission at Chapman University. I've been with Chapman's Office of Admission for 15 years. I was a student at Chapman long ago. And prior to that, I grew up out in Colorado in the Denver metro area. I cover Colorado for our institution, as I would imagine Sergio and Hope does for their institutions too, or at least where you guys are coming from, I should say. I'm happy to discuss anything. If you have questions in particular at Chapman, I am your go-to from Colorado. If you have questions about anything for our discussion today, I hope that you all are willing to participate because it is a good topic and important to discuss.
Yes, thank you, Armin.
Yes.
Hope.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Hope. I'm a professor at Fort Lewis College in Colorado. I actually am not the Western Spoke representative. So I'm actually covering this fair for my Taylor. So you're more than welcome to reach out to me as well. We have the same information about our college, but Taylor would be your go-to if you're going through the whole admission process. But I actually graduated from college in the spring with a degree in biology and a minor in math. So if you have specific questions about those particular subjects, but yeah, Durango is a really beautiful area. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Hope. I think your audio is kind of going in and out. I just wanted to share that, but we heard the majority of that. And then hello, everyone. My name is Sergio Maravia. I am an admission counselor with the University of San Francisco. Very, very happy to talk to you all about, potentially going to school in the Bay Area and also talking about, diversity, inclusion, and topics like that. Originally grew up in the Valley of California, so making the shift to the Bay Area was really nice. And then also I do cover the Colorado area, so I'm really excited to connect with you all if you do have any questions and answer any questions that you may have for USF specifically. To go over a little context, we will be having kind of like this casual conversation to talk about our workshop. Feel free to drop any questions or comments into the chat throughout this conversation, just because it's a smaller group, so we're able to have those more in-depth conversations as well and want to contribute and add to it as well. Additionally, we'll be wrapping up at around, I believe, 10:45 Colorado time, giving you all a 15-minute break before y'all can transition to those one-on-one with the university representatives. But yeah, just to jump into our very first question, let's start off with Armin again. Why is diversity important, especially from a college admission standpoint?
It's a great question. I'm going to get to it in just a second, but I do want to encourage your students that are joining us today, drop questions in the chat, unmute your mic. Please feel free to guide this session. We're excited to chat with you, but some of the questions that we have set up is really to just bridge gaps. If you don't have questions and you're looking at us, we'll obviously guide it, but this is a cool opportunity for you to really lean in on asking specific questions that are really related to you and what you want to get out of your college experience and things of that nature. So use the chat. We're here to go through that. But I think the topic of diversity is obviously very important in a lot of ways. And when you talk about the importance of it just generally, I think it's important to zoom out and actually bring some broader definition to what diversity actually means as well. I think most of us are going to commonly relate diversity directly to race and ethnicity from kind of your first step. And that's natural. It's a very human reaction. That's just kind of what you will initially step out with. But I think in the university setting, and certainly within the Office of Admission, for those that are here today, we're looking at diversity in many more ways, far beyond that of race and ethnicity. We dive as deep as we do into student identities and how you see yourself really living in this world and what you're passionate about, what you're interested in. We look at it from a lens of potential religious or faith backgrounds. We look at it from Even your interests in majors and academic studies bleeds into this. Geographic is obviously one of them. Socioeconomic status is one. We also look at, students that are coming from first generation college going backgrounds, that plays into diversity. Whether you're inner city or rural, those are all elements that really play into this entire consideration. So I think it's best and really important to define diversity before jumping into why it's important. Because if I were in a 17, 18-year-old shoes, I would have looked at myself as a white Christian male being like, I'm not diverse at all. And I think that's important for a lot of students to understand that your different identities and who you are and where you're coming from will definitely play into the fit at an institution and how we see you potentially enriching our campus community, because that's what it's all about. Why is it important? I think that college should present all students with an opportunity for personal and academic growth. I think that if you remain in a homogenous situation, if you're from one and you continue to stay in one, I think that your growth is going to be limited. It's as simple as that. It really is. I think that the amount that you can learn from people from different walks of life and how they have been able to persevere through challenges that you've never even understood or thought of, it can help inform a lot of elements of life. It can create empathy where you never really thought there was before. And really the beauty of a community is derived from the sum of its parts. So if everything is the same, I personally don't see it being the most beautiful and most growth oriented type of environment. So for me, you can dive into many different conversations around DEI, and that's certainly something that's huge in higher ed in general. But I think it's as simple as like college students going to college, you're looking for growth, and a diverse community will promote you with the most opportunities for growth in ways that you never thought you could.
Yeah, I completely agree. Also, is my audio okay now? Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, awesome. So I completely agree that diversity can mean a multitude of different things, but I think what at least our students at Fort Lewis get the most from having diverse classes is that more well-rounded view of the world that we all live in, and then also that ability to talk with different people from different backgrounds, which I think enhances collaboration overall. It also really prepares students for the real world, the workforce, after they graduate, because when you go into the workforce, you're going to be working in environments where you're communicating with all different types of people, and you have to be prepared for that. I think something that is the most helpful about having really diverse classes is going to be that it gets rid of those stereotypes that we all have. Because when you're actually interacting with people that maybe you thought a different stereotype about before, you realize that those stereotypes are extremely general, and they're not going to be the same for everybody. I think that it allows you to be able to interact with people in similar ways, but also to understand that certain people aren't going to have the same life experience that you did, and you're not going to have the same life experience that other people have had. And I think that that's valuable within the classroom, because then you are able to add that into your overall education, where if you're working in a group, somebody else might have more to offer in a certain area than you do, and then you might have something to offer that other people might not. And I think that that's in life in general as well. And I think that that's how collaboration can really enhance your education.
Yeah, and I think from my point of view, diversity is all about, opening doors for people who historically have not had access to like a college education. Thinking back like 100 years from now, there was a certain type of student who went to college, and that was like a white male. And now we're living in a world where so many people have access to, a college education and receiving those kind of career aspirations as well. So, how can we continue increasing that access? And that comes with diversity, as well as supporting the students whenever they're here. And then also just talking about like the immensity of what diversity entails. So yeah, race and ethnicity and culture is like at the forefront of it all, religious backgrounds, income levels, if you're able-bodied or not, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that come from diversity. And whenever you are in this diverse spaces, you really do get to learn not only more about, the others around you, but also more about yourself as well. I think as you grow up, you'll learn that you'll contain multitudes of identities, and being in a space that supports a lot of different identities can help you grow as a whole. So diversity is extremely important, and especially when you're looking into like a college where you're going to be for the next 2, 4, or 6 years, you should definitely be going into a space where you're not only just like welcomed, but celebrated and empowered, depending on what identities you bring to the table. And additionally, too, diversity really does contribute to like innovation, creativity, new ideas. Like you can only get so much from a group of people with similar backgrounds. So whenever you start crossing those kind of ideas and those cultures, you get to create something beautiful too. So whenever you go to like these big cities where all these cultures are shared and all these communities can collaborate, you do see that there's more like, open-mindedness, and you do see there's more like collaboration amongst them, which is something that's really, really beneficial. And additionally, I guess I think I'll probably wrap it up right there. But yeah, thank you so much. That's such an important question, y'all. Now I'm going to hand over to Hope to ask that second question. And of course, once again, if y'all have any other questions, if you want us to talk more about specifically about something that we said, please feel free to drop in the chat or unmute yourself.
Awesome. So I'll just pause a little bit just to make sure that we don't have any questions about what we just discussed. Great. So our next question is going to be, how does admission consider diversity, and how does this contribute to diversity on campus? So Armin, if you want to start us off with that question.
Yeah, I think first it's important to know that every institution will approach their review process in different ways. And that's a natural thing. There's over 4,000 different universities and colleges in the United States alone. All of us will have nuance to our process, things that we evaluate, look for, and try to suss out of an application. And diversity certainly could be, and often is, something that is considered. But again, it goes back to that broad definition. And I think it's important for students to not necessarily tie diversity itself directly to access in that same conversation. They are related, but not one and the same. And students, I implore students to consider diversity from a broader perspective, because it really truly is broad. You could be coming from a very comfortable background, but still have something to offer our campuses that doesn't exist already. And that is, in a way, diversity. So let's make sure that we keep an eye on that. When it comes to admission, how we consider it will relate to many different things. In first admission offices, we need to see that you're academically capable of being successful on our campus, that you present the potential, that promise that, hey, we have the support resources here on our campus for this student to be successful. That goes back to what Sergio was talking about with access too, is students that haven't necessarily had access to higher education and have been marginalized, whether it is the color of their skin or their gender, sex identity, or their religious or faith background, or their cultural heritage. Like we want to make sure that we're providing access for students that haven't been before, that we do want to make sure that they're invited and welcomed onto our campus. And diversity will play a role in that. But again, it goes into the socioeconomic, the geographic, first gen student status, the able-bodied or not. We want to cultivate a class, a cohort of students that when they come in, we are better because we have them. That's what it's really all about. So in admissions, whether you're an admission officer or a dean of enrollment, our objective and our responsibility to the university and to the faculty and our current students is to make sure that we're inviting students, that we're selecting, inviting students to campus that are going to enrich our campus community from their own lived experiences and the backgrounds in which they come from, that they're academically prepared to at least step in and handle the challenges that they'll see at a four-year institution. and that they're going to contribute and join those conversations, that they're going to be change agents, that they will not shy away from challenging conversations, because we only make progress if we can talk about what has existed and where we want to go as a society and as a university. So the university setting is in the end going to be a microcosm of the world, most likely. A lot of us will have even international students on our campus that do also bring their own elements of diversity to our communities. I think that this conversation just is really important to frame in a lot of ways, that some students that might not historically think about themselves as diverse have very diverse backgrounds. You might be coming from a single parent family home with an alcoholic father that has been absent your entire life and potentially verbally or physically abusive. That in itself is a story that we want to know about, that we value, because you might be able to approach difficult situations on our campus in different ways. So zoom out of that standard, contextualize what we usually associate it to, and be broad with how you think about yourself.
Yeah, this is a very important question. And honestly, whenever I was a high school student, I didn't even think that colleges thought about diversity when reviewing applications. I guess now that I'm like, on this side of the conversation, I've now realized, just to kind of say it out there, there's no quota. There's no like specific numbers that we have to reach. It's kind of more of a subjective approach, to how can we make the most diverse class as we can. Because once again, a class that looks all the same with similar experiences and everything like that is only going to do a certain amount of things together. So creating those diverse classes is really beneficial for like the classroom setting, our impact on the community, as well as just, preparing them for their careers. Within the application, I guess to go over specifically, you'll get asked a series of questions, especially more about like, more about your identity, gender preferences, or your pronouns exactly as well. And also you'll have a time to talk more about your personal stories within the essay portion of our application. So there is how we really evaluate diversity and get to know you more from a personal level, rather than just from like, the boxes that you check off. And it really does contribute to how we develop that class in the future. Because for example, I remember we were reviewing an application from, I think, someone from Hawaii. And that was like one of the only applications I was reviewing from Hawaii. And I was even thinking about like location matters too. If someone is coming from a totally different community than everyone else, then for a fact that they're going to have different perspectives. And then also, just once again, providing the kind of equity whenever students apparently don't have that much access to their higher education. For example, if their college didn't go to parents, or maybe their high school didn't offer APs or IBs courses. So evaluating that from a diverse perspective and also like an equity standpoint is also really important whenever developing those classes. And also too, like students who come from different backgrounds have different experiences. For example, if a student is a leader in their Black student union on their high school campus, like that's some really impactful stuff that we want to read about and that you want to share, because we know exactly that there's spaces for you on our campus where you can thrive in and find those kind of community partners along the way as well. So that's kind of a little tidbit about how we create diversity and like how we look at it from an admission standpoint specifically.
Awesome. Yeah. At Fort Lewis College, we do have a very diverse population of students. So we'll do specific trainings actually as a staff for all of the admissions counselors on how to speak to different populations, how different populations of students might need help in different ways. And again, that's to create that even playing field, understanding that if somebody comes from a different background, they might need us to reach out a little bit more than somebody whose parents both went to college, who are experienced with the college process, whose siblings went to college. They already understand how they're going to fill out that application. So understanding the different resources that we give to different students, and then understanding that that doesn't make them less or more important than another student. So we look at all of our students equally as far as admission. So we try to offer those resources, but we also don't admit one student based off of the color of their skin, if that makes sense, or whether or not their parents went to college, or just all different types of students. I also really like what Armin said about making sure that our students are going to be successful on our campus. There's a side of academic success, and then there's also the side of social success. And so you want to make sure, or we want to make sure as an institution, that students feel comfortable on campus, that once they come to campus, that transition from high school is going to be smooth. And so with that being said, we do take into account, do we have resource centers on campus that this student can utilize to make sure that they are academically and socially successful on our campus? We also, again, as I said, give them resources throughout the process of admission. We also give them resources in the in-between. So a lot of students will communicate with their admission counselor through the entire admission process, and then they just all of a sudden are signed up for classes. And now all of a sudden they don't have a person. So we really try to assign them other staff members in that transition process, and then they're assigned an academic advisor after that process. Let me just admit student. So it's really helpful to look at, again, the resources that we have that we can give to students, and then just making sure that they will be academically successful. So with that being said, Armin, do you want to cover the next question that we have? And again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or interrupt us at any time.
No worries, thank you. I also wanted to say hello, Kathy. So good to see you. Thanks for popping in. As always, thank you for putting on such a great program for all of us. So the next question related to this topic that we have, and again, if you have questions, put them in the chat or even turn your camera on and open your mic and voice it out. But what we have out there is just, what organizations does your institution offer that support campus diversity? And Hope, we'll start with you.
Awesome. Yeah, so Fort Lewis College has a very diverse student population, as I mentioned before. Over 50% of our students are students of color, and we have 185 Native American tribes and Alaska Native villages represented on campus. So with that being said, we really try to have different resource centers that help all students. Also, I just realized my mic is not silent now. So a couple that I want to mention. We have our Native American Center. We have El Centro de Muchos Colores. We have our Black Student Resource Center, and then we have our Gender and Sexuality Resource Center. So for all of those centers on campus, they're going to provide different resources, different events. So just a few that I like to mention. Through the Native American Center, we have a big powwow celebration every year. And that's where students can perform different dances. We'll also have a Hajoni Days pageant where students can compete like a beauty pageant, but it's more culturally centered. And so they are doing different activities that really enhance the education of their culture to the general population, which is really great. All of the activities that we do in these centers really focus on educating other students that might not know about different cultures as well. So not only are we celebrating the cultures that students are a part of, we're also putting that out for the community to be able to participate in that as well. Our Gender and Sexuality Resource Center has different resources available for students to connect with other students or different faculty. We also partner with different programs in the community. So we have a program called 4-Star, which is a program for adults in the community for resources as far as transitioning. And then we also partner with the Rainbow Center at the Youth Center in the community. And so that's a way for people who are part of the Gender and Sexuality Resource Center to sometimes mentor youth in the community as far as giving them more resources as well. So there's a lot of partnership there. They'll also have a program called T at the G, and that's where they just talk about tough topics in a way to help and just, again, educate the community of Durango and the community of Fort Lewis College. We also have other events through the Black Student Resource Center and El Centro. El Centro does Fiesta on the Mesa, which we just had a few weeks ago. And that's like a big party. There's cultural dances, there's also food. So food is a big way that we try to get students together and really celebrate that diversity on campus. Because in all different cultures, food is used as a form of celebration. And then also through our Black Student Resource Center, we'll have movie nights, they'll do game nights. And it's just a really great way for students to build community once they come to college, especially if they're coming from a community that is very different. So we make sure that transition is as smooth as possible. But with that being said, Sergio, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I love this question. I think there's a lot of resources on campus that a lot of universities provide that high school students don't really know about until they actually get there. So, just to be really aware in your college search, what resources are provided by the university, just so as soon as you arrive on the campus, you'll know what to utilize and what's there. At the University of San Francisco specifically, we have our Intercultural Center as well as our Gender and Sexuality Center. Because we are a very diverse campus, we're actually more diverse in the city of San Francisco itself. We want to make sure all students are supported. With our professional staff, they provide community meetups for certain identities. They have more creative outlets, for example, like a spoken word lounge, as well as manage a council of leaders from student organizations that represent different identities as well. So those are just some things that we provide over there. Additionally, I think something that is commonly provided sometimes by universities is living learning communities or themed housing. Whenever you live on campus, if you live on campus at an institution, ask about their living learning communities or their themed dorms. Specifically at USF, we have a themed floor for our Black and African American identifying students, our first generation college students, our LGBT plus community, and a variety of others. So that's a great way to not only find people with similar backgrounds and similar interests, but then also is kind of see it helps out with that transition into college, especially if you're coming from if it's your first time on a college setting, it's really good to have that support network. Additionally, as something else I think we have, themed floors. It's basically, for example, let's talk about the first generation college living learning community at USF. On that floor, once you apply to USF and you're admitted, you'll get that housing application, and then you'll be able to select if you want to be in a floor that's predominantly and all first generation college students like yourself or like a student applying. So then you'll be able to have that first year with students who are also first generation college students, being your parents didn't go to college. And you'll have residential advisors who share that similar identity. And basically that floor is just a place where you can connect with students like yourself, and then also receive those kind of resources as well, just because, it's all first generation college students and they often provide those kind of different specific resources for that community. So that's kind of one example, but it also translates to other communities as well and other identities. So great question. Thank you for that. And then also just want to talk more about graduations. Often universities will provide graduation celebrations for specific identities. For example, at USF, we have our Black student graduation, our Latino student graduation, our Lavender graduation for the LGBT plus community. And once again, it just provides a space for, for those identities to be celebrated and to celebrate the way how they would want to celebrate it. So that's just a few things that USF has to offer. But of course, as always, please do some research in regards to what institutions that you're looking at offer in regards to these kind of diverse opportunities. And I'll hand off to Armin to provide something about Chapman as well.
Love it. I think that in your research, you'll find that most universities are, if not already supporting some of these efforts very well, they're investing deeply in them because of how important they are. I hope that resonates with all of you. Not going to be over verbose, but I did want to drop in a few links if you're curious about some of the offerings that we do have and the support services we have at Chapman for students in these communities. And again, to go back to that pervasive sense of that umbrella approach to diversity, like we have 8 different quote unquote diversity projects on our campus, and one of them is about military affiliates and students that are dependents of veterans or veterans themselves. And again, it's just, I think I bring this up to demonstrate really how overarching these topics can be, because I think that most people, if you were to go through this type of conversation, that might be a community that is left on the fringe and that isn't discussed and isn't paid attention to. And maybe there are resources on campuses that are there for military affiliates, but a lot of times it's just kind of something that you're not talking about. So I really just highlight it to just demonstrate how broad this conversation really truly is. And again, many, many resources available on our campus in this regard. We do have about 10 minutes left. We do have one other question, but I do want to put out there, if anybody does have a question for the group or a topic you want to discuss, now would be a really good time to bring it up. And then if not, we can jump into our fourth question.
Yeah, any questions, anyone? Could be anything. What our favorite color is. I don't know.
All right, so I'll just go ahead and ask our final question, which is, what are some tips that you all have for students when searching for colleges that might help them find a good fit?
I'll lead off on this, and I don't want to sound too soapboxy with the whole growth mindset type of thing, but I really do encourage students to look at this as a massive investment in not just your education, but in your own personal growth. And I think it's really critical for students to seek out environments that will challenge them to grow, but will support them along the way too. And it's important to circle back to, what are you looking to get out of your 4 years in college, and be very thoughtful and critical of yourself on what that is. It's okay if you want to go to college and have fun, but it should be more than that. It should be a lot more than that. And you should leave college a much better person than you were when you started. Like that to me, at the end of the day, obviously receiving your degree is a big deal, but that to me speaks volumes about your experiences. If you are exiting those doors as a graduate, being confident and being a better person, a better member of society, somebody that's going to carry themselves with empathy and respect, that's the biggest thing. So seek out an environment that's going to offer you that challenge and support. And I think that you will find that you will have a great, successful college experience if you can find a place that has both of those for you.
Great question. I feel like there's a lot of tips I could probably offer, but I think it's more, yeah, honestly, the research is going to be really important. Like, really see what kind of resources that they have on your college campuses, and be really direct with the admissions counselor. Like, be like, hey, these are the identities I hold. How are you going to support those identities once I'm at your university? And that question will probably lead to some very, really straightforward answers. And I guess whenever you are on the campus, utilize those resources. I remember whenever I went to college, there was a similar institution, El Centro, where it supported Chicanx, Latinx students on that campus. And I didn't know about it till like my second or third year. So I was like, oh, that was a whole year. I didn't utilize that resource. That's specifically meant for my kind of space. So whenever you're there, be really intentional about utilizing those resources, because there are really, really passionate staff and really, really important resources that can help elevate your college experience. That can make a long-term impacts in regards to your own personal growth or your own like career aspirations. So whenever you're on campus, utilize it, and you'll find people in those spaces as well, like yourself. So you can kind of collectively grow together, which is not only like really nice, but it's also very empowering too, to kind of see your similar identities like shared. And I want another tip for the search. Oh, attend university events. I remember that was another thing too. Only thing I did for my college search whenever I was a high school student was I applied, and then whenever they offered like those admitted tours, I went to that, and that was it. But all our universities have some sort of virtual events now that you can engage more in, go to information sessions, do virtual tours. Like, access is so good right now, especially on the virtual content. So please, do those research, engage in the specific universe that you might be interested in. That would be very helpful.
Yeah, I also love this. So I guess my biggest tip would be to look for colleges that offer similar activities or clubs that you're already involved in, or athletics. And then the other side of things, look at what your class size is going to be, how much access you get to professors, Because if you're somebody that kind of just like slides through in college, like you don't need to talk to your teachers that much, you just get your work done and turn it in, then maybe a bigger university will be good for you. But if you're a student that constantly communicates with your teachers, has that one-on-one connection with your teachers, or will need like letters of recommendation from mentors in the future, then a smaller college might be a better option for you. So taking those things into consideration, and then like Sergio mentioned, visiting campus. So let's say you pick like the top 3 schools that you're really interested in, visit those schools, because it could be that you think that you're really going to enjoy a school, and then you visit the school and you're like, I'm not really sure that this is for me. Or it could be the other way around. You could not really be sure about a campus, and then you visit it and you're like, this is where I'm going. This is exactly where I want to be. I feel comfortable here. So visit campus. But I think that that is our last question. Oh, and it looks like there's a question in the chat. Okay, we have, what are the biggest things to consider when applying for college? All right, Armin, do you want to take this question?
What are the biggest things to consider while applying for college? I think that you will quickly realize that the best answer to most questions revolving in this area is it depends. And I hate to be cliche, but it really does depend, because all of us are different. All of us have different interests and passions and pursuits. And this is difficult because there's not a right answer. There really isn't. And if anything, the right answer is very obscure and grandiose. It is what's important to you. And you're like, well, what is important to me? And a lot of times as a young adult, like you're used to like math, like there's a right answer, and it's like very structural on how you get there. But at this point, you're being asked to lean into something, a space that you've never explored before, and you might be the first in your family to explore it. So it's intimidating. It's really be very thoughtful and mindful about what you want to get out of college, of your 4 years, what is truly important, who do you want to become, and then finding places that can support and challenge that type of approach that you're hoping to gain. And it's going to cause some anxiety and stress, because where do you start? And Hope had some great points, like start with big filters, like, is there a particular part of the country that you want to go to? Like, you have to be mindful about financial fit. How much financial aid is offered at certain institutions? Will I be eligible for it? There's a lot of different things that come into this conversation. The size of your classrooms, the activities offered, like you can filter down, that 4,000 plus list to a pretty manageable size. And then you need to do your research. And that's where you reach out to us. You reach out to current students that are on college campuses. And most of us have resources to connect you with them, whether it's a student that's from Colorado or a student that's pursuing an area of study that you're interested in. There are a lot of really, really good resources that you don't even need to leave your own home in the Western Slope. You have access to those, you have access to us. I promise we don't bite. We're happy to work with you. We want to help you through this. Most people in admission either didn't have a lot of support themselves or had somebody that was phenomenal and transformative in their life that helped them get to where they are. And either way, we want to be there for you. So don't be intimidated in that process to ask questions.
I dropped my little response in the chat. I think, yeah, it depends. It really will depend. And just those little things I listed contain multitudes. But I put location, the costs, and opportunities. For me specifically, I wanted to go to a college a little closer to home. So that was like location based. But from a University of San Francisco perspective, a lot of students come to the city because of the location. Cost, is it financially doable? That's always a really important question to ask. And the opportunities, like, are there clubs on campus that you can join? Is there a program that's going to help out your career? Stuff like that. Like, that's however you define it. But those are probably the 3 main things I would probably recommend with the college search.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we are coming to a close. So my final suggestion would just be to research the schools that you're interested in as much as possible. I get super excited whenever students reach out to me because I love sharing information about our college. And I'm sure that Armin and Sergio are the same. But thank you all for joining us today. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us afterwards.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the fair ahead. Take advantage of it.
Thank you all.
All right. I think we're okay to close out now. See you all in a couple hours.
See ya.
Yeah.
Good luck with your visits.
Yes, you too.